Sonic Boom episode 30. I can see Sonic's fear from here. And C is spelled the S-E-A way. We start out with one of Eggman's big robots getting decapitated by Sonic's spin dash, and immediately dying instead of starting out the story with a proper action scene. Eggman takes off in his Eggmobile, saying that was only phase 1, and he comes home sad. It was amusing that Cubot said cheerfully, "So, how's your defeat?" and Orbot sheepishly tried to be more polite. You know, it's so merciful of Eggman to not dismantle him for that. Eggman then wants to use Sonic's fear against him. Wait, how did he take that long to decide to do this if he knows that Sonic's scared of water? Also, how did he find out that Sonic was scared of water in the first place? Orbot wonders for some reason if Sonic's fear is that people will find out he sneaks into the basement and sings show tunes, wouldn't that be out of character? And it turns out that was his fear, developing his character. Wouldn't it be more interesting to actually see Orbot doing that briefly? Eggman wants to use Sonic's fear of water against them, and it turns out the montage was pointless because it was just so he could put his lucky shorts in the washer dryer. Wait, Eggman never wears shorts. That's stupid. He plans to put Sonic underwater later, and Stick says cynically that they're all puns in life. Which is true, and their chess game for once gets interrupted by a minor earthquake. They're really bored enough to try everything. I can only imagine Tails playing chess. Knuckles gets flown behind the biplane with a parachute, and he gets knocked around a little by the source, which rises out of the water and has Eggman taunt them. Eggman casually threatens to make a giant wave destroy the village, and he's so casual about telling them to stop him that it's clear he's got a trap. Sonic wants to stall saving the village for 8 hours, and somehow, shockingly, even though the heroes are heroes, Tails has no problem stalling saving the village and going to Mad Burger. What? That was weird. I mean, they do have 8 hours, so I understand, but come on. They don't even snark about how he's being selfish for one moment. Eggman says they should have brought a Sudoku, since he has nothing to do waiting for them to attack him. Why wouldn't he have brought anything? Why wouldn't he have brought at least a game to play on his cell phone? No person would just stand around doing nothing for that long. And Tails says they should go stop Eggman. Then why did he humor him before? Amy says he's stalling. It took until now for her to say this. And Sonic says he's afraid of water, and he broke his promise and didn't learn how to swim with little kids because they're cruel. At least his friends tried to teach him how to swim earlier, even if off-screen. Tails conveniently reveals he had made a scuba suit for letting Sonic battle underwater. So they unintentionally ripped off that scuba suit Sonic used in Sonic the Comic, the one that still let him spin dash underwater. But Sonic's still too scared to go underwater, so the news reporter talks to him on the sofa arrogantly and puts his finger in some water and accidentally splashes it towards an outlet, which starts a fire. How'd he mess up that badly? It's a good thing Tails was so prepared that he thought to make a scuba suit just in case anyone would ever need one. Sonic's then put in the ocean and panics at first, and he sinks because his spine pops the flotation device he was wearing. So Amy and Knuckles jump underwater to save him, and Sonic's for some reason relaxed at first before panicking for some reason from a blink or you'll miss it moment. Good thing their communicators work underwater. It was smart of Tails to think to make them waterproof ahead of time. They go to Eggman, and he amusingly taunts Sonic, saying that he's sure he's not the least bit concerned about the tons of water all around him. At first I thought he was going to taunt them about the fact that they callously put off saving the village from tons of water, but no, that'd be self-awareness the show actually needs. Self-awareness about in-universe stuff. The heroes are too slow to attack the robots, and Sonic tediously swims away slowly from the robot crabs before getting trapped in some collapsed stone rubble. Like, that is a third type of badnik the show has, like crabs. Who cares? Buzz bombers and motobugs are like first level badniks. There's no way Eggman would keep using just them. A crab robot gets close to him, and Sonic's air hose gets cut. And Tails wonders if they can use the hose from the pulling system or whatever. Six takes it and goes underwater with it, insisting that she doesn't need a suit. At least she has a new personality trait, arrogance. That makes perfect sense for a conspiracy theorist because she needs to be overconfident to believe in her crazy delusions. Being smug has a lot more potential for stories and jokes than being a conspiracy theorist. Because sure, she says a different line every time, but it's always the same unfunny joke that doesn't affect the plot, so it's just padding. She briefly has her ankle get entangled by a vine, but breaks out eventually and saves the day, and just barely gets out of the ocean in time. I wish she was brave and useful a lot more often. It's impressive that she knows how to swim, when she's been raised in the wild. Good thing Amy taught her how to swim off screen. He taunts the big fish robots to make them follow him, rides them as cool music plays using some vines as horse reins, and guides them so that they inconvenience Eggman and topple over the machine, so that now it's facing away from the village. It's about to explode, so the heroes escape in the plane, and Eggman ends up on the beach with a cracked Eggmobile. Naturally, Sonic's not over his fear after all that, and instead says that it was the scariest thing he ever did and he never wants to see water again. I'm glad they didn't do what Sonic X did and go with the dumb, condescending cliche that facing your fear makes it magically go away. For once, the show had smart writing. This episode was about Eggman taking advantage of Sonic's hydrophobia by forcing him to go underwater to destroy a machine, which is threatening to flood his village. Conveniently, Tails was prepared enough to have already made a bunch of scuba suits for its friends, although they don't let Sonic spin dash in them, which is more realistic than Sonic the comic, and keeps the tension up better. It makes his eventual victory satisfying because instead of winning the same boring way he always does, he wins by jumping on top of the chompers and riding them so they crash into something. So it's satisfying how smart he was. I just have to wonder why Eggman doesn't always take advantage of Sonic's fear. But I guess there's only so many ideas he can come up with for that, and he gets so frustrated with losing at one plant that he doesn't feel like trying it again. A common trap the villains fall into instead of trying again after fixing their old mistakes. But wait, how can Sonic swim in this episode even a little when he specifically said he didn't know how to swim? I guess there was a time skip and he got a new flotation device and was taught how to swim off screen when he only had 8 hours. Can you learn how to swim in 8 hours? I mean, he went to a swimming lesson, but he said he ditched it. It doesn't matter because he barely actually swam anyways. Styx had a badass moment. She saved Sonic from drowning without a scuba suit. But how did the air hose she gave Sonic underwater not immediately get water in it from being put underwater and get it sent into his mouth? When seawater gets into someone's mouth, it's so salty that they immediately feel sick. And they get sick if they swallowed it, which Sonic would have to do. It wouldn't be hard for them to just have bubble shields instead of scuba suits. Wouldn't that be more Sonic-like? But the action scene underwater was good at distracting me from all those potential problems because there was tension and always something happening. Also, it was good that they didn't pretend Sonic would get over his fear because of this. It was annoying that his hydrophobia felt like a compressed vice only existing for this episode. What's the point of giving Sonic a big fear if he only panics about potentially drowning in like one episode? Sonic Underground references it in at least 2 episodes. I mean, he's on a tropical island, completely surrounded by water. Episode 30-2, In the Midnight Hour. We start out with Styx making a painting by acting like a mixed martial artist, but impressively she has the self-awareness to realize her painting sticks. Even though she's a conspiracy theorist, so how did she remain that way if she has self-awareness? And 2, abstract art is considered good by some people, so you'd think someone should see it somewhere and think it's good, and she'd realize that. Anyways, out of nowhere she sees someone in a black cloak with creepy red swirly eyes, with ominous music playing. I was impressed the show did that, trying to have a mysterious and magical villain who's probably brainwashing people. She's not believed by Sonic, and she says that the problem with being paranoid is that nobody believes you when something is wrong. Well, I was gonna say that someone paranoid like her wouldn't have the kind of self-awareness to call herself paranoid, but I'm paranoid. I'm perfectly willing to call myself that. But she's an outright conspiracy theorist schizophrenic. I guess schizophrenics would know they're paranoid though, because they'd have been proven wrong about their paranoia enough. And then she talks to herself like a crazy person. Then I have to sit through her friends tediously not believing her and accusing her of being delusional. I didn't need to fucking see that. Anyways, then Styx sees some robed person talking in a TV show trying to brainwash people. But Styx immediately pushes him over and tells people that their minds were being taken over by the Dreamcaster. Why didn't the guy try to fight back? Why was he so incompetent? And it turns out everyone who was watching the show all at the same time were just sleeping, and she woke them up by talking loudly. So an angry crowd frustrates us by not believing Styx in a fantasy universe where anything could happen, and Eggman's tried to brainwash people. Somehow not one of them had seen and heard the Dream Watcher. Not one of them had insomnia. I sympathized with Styx when she said, "I can't believe you guys don't trust me. I thought you were my friends." Instead, she just gets framed for the studio getting damaged. Although, she does have schizophrenia, so it makes sense that people would assume she'd get violent and do collateral damage because they don't understand that it doesn't guarantee you'd be violent. So apparently this island doesn't have PBR. So nobody even bothered to go back in the episode with Rewind to see if the Dream Watcher really showed up, when you can do that just fine with live television. Don't tell me that it doesn't exist at this point because of the way the TVs look. This is the world with robots in it. And the internet, as we'll see later. And the cops go after her for vandalism, and even her own friends betrayed her by handcuffing her. I guess all of her heroism before this point meant nothing. Then Styx wonders if her perception of reality is distorted, finally, only to see from jail that a whole bunch of people were brainwashed. Just when she was about to make a breakthrough, too. I predicted that the Dream Watcher robot was part of Eggman's plan early on, out of cynicism. But I was kind of disappointed to see that it was true. It didn't have to be Eggman's plan, but I'm still impressed he was so confident. But it's just that this cloak guy never looked like a robot. I just see a black void under his cloak, and that never makes sense. And it'd make more sense if he was mystical. The heroes are part of the people who got brainwashed, and Eggman makes them dance. And he complains that the reason Styx was spared was that she's the only one in town without a TV. And he naturally asks what she even does on Saturday nights. I wish I knew. And Eggman looks even more competent by telling the sleepwalking horde to start stealing from him. Never mind, Styx is easily able to convince Knuckles to free her from her cell by saying she's got sugar plums in the jail. Even though he's supposed to be brainwashed, he wouldn't have the free will to decide he wants sugar plums more than wanting to obey Eggman. So he destroys a part of the wall, and the Dream Watcher tries to brainwash her or something, mentioning sugar plums, and she sits down with her hands over her ears and runs away screaming rather than easily being brainwashed. I guess it makes sense because she's so anti-conformist. So she's the perfect protagonist for this kind of plot. Eggman trying to make an excuse for the crowd not applauding just makes me wonder why they didn't, because they're clearly hypnotized, so why didn't they applaud? Why didn't he tell them to and get his order obeyed? Them being hypnotized doesn't explain it, because Styx was able to convince Knuckles to do something outside of Eggman's brainwashing. Styx swings in on a rope with heroic music playing, and Eggman reveals that somehow a tinfoil hat is a way to be immune to mind control. Somehow the sleepwalking crowd moves really slowly, when you'd think Eggman would brainwash them to run, especially Sonic. Styx keeps putting tinfoil hats on the heroes, and somehow that undoes the brainwashing on them. I thought the brainwashing would stay for the entire night. The heroes keep putting tinfoil hats on people, and a nasally civilian says that he's going to become anti-conformist now. Styx sends green stuff at the robot and punches and kicks it, somehow not injuring herself in the process, and destroys it. At least she looked cool. Obviously, all of them have to have really hard fists and feet to not injure themselves from kicking the robots. Knuckles throws a robot to destroy it, and Eggman finally leaves with his Eggmobile, and he stupidly decides to remove Orbot's wit chip for no reason. I'm guessing that won't have any consequences past this episode, so what, does he forget? Amy then insists that she always believed Styx, and it was only Dream Watcher talking, and Styx is desperate enough to believe what's obviously a lie, considering that she and the rest of her friends weren't acting like zombies back then, and she's been disbelieved by her friends plenty of times. While it was refreshing to have Eggman have a really threatening plan for change where he successfully brainwashes the whole town, the entire thing was forced, and I spent most of the episode really frustrated because I knew Styx was right about the Dream Watcher existing, and thus hated that nobody believed her. It wouldn't have been so awful to watch if I hadn't been shown that she was right and it was kept as a surprise plot twist. The reason I say the plot is forced is that there's no way Eggman could create a brainwashed horde of sleepwalking people through the television. Hypnosis doesn't work like that. If your brain isn't paying attention consciously, it won't write down what's happening around it into long-term memory. So even if it does notice subliminal messages, it won't really matter. The best Eggman could hope for is that he'll impact their dreams because they're hearing the Dream Watcher. It would have made more sense if the Dream Watcher really had been a magical wizard, like I assumed from the start. Even then, if he can even do this to people, how the hell is he not taking over the world yet, and how will he not keep trying this and take over the world inevitably? I was hoping the show would never have the same problem AOSCH did, where it was completely forced that Eggman didn't take over any cities, let alone the world. But apparently, this show is just as nonsensical about Eggman's low position in life. Almost like the Sonic series isn't meant to have Eggman have such a low position, because it makes no sense. And even if the Dreamwatcher was magical, as the black void beneath his cloak would imply since he doesn't look like a robot at all, this entire plot hinges on the idea that every single person in the entire village leaves their TV on all night at the same channel. I can't believe that. I can imagine most people don't do that because they're afraid of the electric bill. I can only imagine old people doing this after they fall asleep watching TV. Not to mention, not only does everyone in the village leave the TV on unmuted with no exceptions, but everyone in that crowd all at the same time was watching the exact same channel and had a TV in their bedroom, rather than the living room. Even though this isn't modern day, I mean, look at how small the TVs are in a world with Eggman's robots in it. I can't believe that the robot would be able to broadcast on every single channel from one studio. And I think I remember seeing the heroes channel surfing at some point, so it's not like there's only one channel in the whole town. But apparently it chose the most popular one, and it was the only one people were watching at that time. I don't remember seeing babies in the crowd. How did no one remember hearing Dreamwatcher when the TV was on in front of them? When not everyone falls asleep as fast as each other. So some people would have heard the Dreamwatcher, just for Six to wake them up, so they must have not been fully asleep in the first place, or else nothing could wake them up. They'd be in REM sleep. So Eggman didn't even have the hypnotizing take place at the perfect time of night. By the way, why was Six even out that time of the night? That's another reason this plot shouldn't have happened. Why was she outside that late just for the sake of making a painting? She has a house with no TV since she's so paranoid of the media's influence, and yet she's not making the painting indoors. This was the best they could come up with for why she witnessed that robot. They couldn't have had raccoons push down the garbage can outside of her house. That would have created a noise to make her go outside. The only thing that her even seeing the robot early contributed to the plot was getting her arrested by her own friends and thrown in jail. At least they were justified since they thought she damaged the studio in a paranoid rage, so who wouldn't want to arrest a violent nutjob? Even if she used to be a hero, it's her present actions that really matter. So I'm not too mad. But we didn't need to see her in jail, did we? Sure, it gave her a convenient open window to look out at and see the crowd of people outside. But doesn't her bedroom have a window too? She could have just been woken up by hearing the crowd of people outside because she has trouble sleeping. Relying on a television that's turned on at night makes even less sense to work than brainwashing pollen. Because at least the pollen could be thought of as unique, magical Mobius pollen that fleshes out the world a little more. But this is so unscientific. Why couldn't he have used the brainwashing magical staff like in Fleetway? Why couldn't the Dreamwatcher be an independent villain like I thought he'd be? Of all the convoluted ways for Eggman to brainwash people, this was the most unlikely to work. But somehow it does. And I'm proud of him, but then why is he foiled by tinfoil hats? Just because they're associated with conspiracy theorists? And why didn't he... Well, if he carried missiles in his Eggmobile and fired them at the heroes, he'd risk blowing up his own slaves, so that does make sense. But you think he'd at least try to make the Dreamwatcher able to fight so he could defend his defenseless slave army, who somehow walk really slowly and don't applaud him and moan all the time, when that doesn't benefit him at all. Oh yeah, he did have robots to defend them, didn't he? I actually forgot he had a bunch of robots there because the heroes deal with them so easily. I can't even say at least he tried, because he should really start making his robots out of tougher stuff. At least Sad AM tried to make sense with the swap bots. They were probably made out of really hard metal, which made sense of Eggman to think to do. And sure, Sonic moves fast, but realistically, if he slammed into anything at super speed, he'd kill himself from the sheer speed of the impact, even if he could slice through that metal. And it looked goofy to show a Sonic character lose their rings every single time they should get hurt. So we can't fully translate that into stories, even though it would make more sense that way. The point is, Eggman had no excuse for not making his robots out of carbon nanotubes by now. I can imagine if he made them out of the best materials possible, Tails would make a ray gun to have a laser blast through them anyways. So that could justify why he'd give up on making them out of the best materials ever. So that could be the plot of an episode to fill in a plot hole, so I'm guessing the show never did that. The bottom line is, while it was great that Eggman was super competent for once, this was a frustrating, contrived episode. But I love that Six got an episode focusing on her again. Can we get a lot more of those? I like her way better when she's an actual focus, as an actual believable person, and not just a spouter delusions for mandatory line. Because there are real people who are like her, so she is a believable character. Except for the parts where she shows self-awareness of how she's a paranoid kook, instead of just thinking she's independent thinking and everyone else is in the wrong. But ultimately, I can't believe this is a good episode because most of it was too frustrating because I knew Six was right and she was just persecuted. They should have spent time on something other than this instead of padding.